Loading. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Content is Queen presents Leaders and Learners. As you know, we always stick by the rule that our leaders are lifetime learners and they're experts in their field, and we are here to make sure that they can tell their story to their target audience and those that are interested in connecting with them. So without further ado, I want to introduce you all to DJ Moultrie of Black Equity Network and allow him to tell y'all about himself, what he has going on, and what we have to look forward to from Mr. Moultrie.
Well, thank you, Tonya, so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. We did build Black Equity Network about 2 years ago. Our goal, what I found in my travels before building Black Equity Network was that Black entrepreneurs and Black investors did not know about each other. And so we built the platform of Black Equity Network to bring the two worlds together. So business owners could get funding, they can get opportunities, they can get connections, and investors can actually put their seeds or put their money in good soil. And so that was the ultimate goal with building our network and then eventually building our podcast.
Very good. So starting a new business, a new platform means that you saw a gap in the industry somewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
What happened for you to decide, even if we see that, something usually triggers us to, press that button, right, and get started. So what was the catalyst for you to decide to fill that gap that you saw in that industry?
Great question. I was looking at other podcasts, other digital platforms, and I was actually reached out to a few and said, hey, is there an opportunity to, network with these entrepreneurs over here or these investors over here? And I'll be honest with you, I was ignored by a lot of people who look like you and I. I was ignored and kind of pushed to the side. And so there's, we always talk about the good old boys network, but I also found that in all cultures where everybody kind of already has like their circle of friends. And if you're not part of that circle, if you didn't pay your way in, or if you didn't know a person who knew a person, then you weren't allowed into the club. So already Black founders were not receiving the amount of funding or the amount of connections or opportunities. And then on top of that, there was a small sector that was, and then they were kind of pushing out the up and coming entrepreneurs and up and coming investors. So I said, well, if this podcast or this digital platform will not allow this group of people in, somebody has to build it. And so I said, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a podcaster. At the time, I wasn't necessarily the best networker. And so I said, well, maybe this is an opportunity to learn something new, to, gain a new skill set, and then also have a little bit more control of how information flows into our culture. And so I took a leap. I had no idea where it was taking me. But 2 years later, here we are with a really great opportunity to help as many people as possible.
What has been your most dynamic experience thus far since you've started, most memorable or impactful?
Wow. Okay. So as you were saying that question, all these little faces started flashing in my eyes. I think one of the most memorable experiences was maybe the first few months of launching our platform, and a Black woman entrepreneur looked me dead in the face. It was a virtual dead in the face, similar to this conversation. But she was like, besides your podcast, what are you doing to help Black women? And for me, I was like, well, why frame it that way? Why just get rid of the podcast as if it has no value to it? Now, 2 years later, you look at someone like a Joe Rogan who receives $100 million contract from Spotify to license his podcast on Spotify. And so people are like, wow, okay, well, podcasts are a valuable place. But at the time, I don't think people 2 years ago were valuing it that way. And so I remember that conversation very, very, I think about it all the time. And so my response to her was, I can't just erase the podcast and say, well, besides the podcast, what am I doing for Black women? Because besides that conversation, most of my guests are Black women. So when you erase something like the podcast and say, well, what are you doing? Then that kind of erases all the work that we're doing. And so my response to her was, I'm not going to erase the podcast. I find it to be very valuable. And the majority of our audience is Black women. So I just couldn't get past that question the way it was phrased, because it was kind of eliminating all the work we were doing and all the connections we were making.
Did you ever think to ask her, or did you ask her, like what? Or what was she expecting? Or what do you want from me? Any of those things?
I did not ask. I believe that contrast comes to your life for a reason.
Okay.
I believe that question was contrast to let me know the type of frequency that I want to be around, rather than the frequency I don't want to be around.
Got it.
As much as I want to help Black entrepreneurs and investors, that doesn't mean they necessarily value the platform as much as we do. And so the goal is, how do you find the people who value you as much as you value them?
Very good. And what have you found the answer to be?
As far as finding
where do you find your target audience? Where do you find those people that you can actually connect with and help?
Oh, Tonya, great question. You are a great questionnaire. I like this.
I'm nosy, sir. I'm nosy.
I actually, to be honest with you, they find me. They find us. Okay. I feel like
one of the things that I try to get people to understand, especially as they start in their careers, their branding, if you put in the work at the beginning and consistently put out good content, you're consistently putting out your message, after a while, people actually start looking for you. Yes. But I'm glad that you said that, because I've been looking for someone to say, you know what, you're right. If I work really hard at the beginning and I put all of me into this thing that I'm passionate about and I know has value, which you've said and you've been able to show, eventually it starts coming back the other way. It's not always me chasing. Although I'm guessing you also teach people to continue to level up, right? It's not, okay, this is what I got, now I'm cool, and be done with it. You have to continuously level up and move forward and do outreach, but it's not as difficult once you've established that you're someone that can put out good content, it has value, and there's an audience for it.
What I learned from the acquisition space, being able to find really great deals for investors, is the money, true profit, is made on the buy. It's not made on the sell. It's made at the very front end of anything. So if the best discount that you can get on a deal, finding a distressed property, finding a distressed business, the money is made on the front end. So you kind of already know in the acquisition space that if I can get this particular asset at this particular price, then I know that it's going to be profitable no matter what happens to the market, no matter how upside down it is. There's going to be value in this because I have such a great deal. There's no way I can lose. So I take that same concept in a podcast space or a digital space. If we can build this value in the front end, I know there's going to be value on the back end. And here we are seeing that fruit come from those roots.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how many, what does your team look like? How's your team structured to kind of move this, this body of work forward?
Sure. I honestly have a very small team. I just have me, a couple of interns, and I also have a operations manager. But other than that, it's just a small team of maybe 2 or 3 people.
Interns. So that means you're doing a level of teaching, mentoring, guiding. Tell me about that. What's your leadership style?
Well, they actually teach me, to be honest with you, Tonya. They I find people who are smarter than me at whatever that particular area is. So if it's digital marketing, if it's social media, if it's research, find people who are already, that's what they do, and show me, okay, well, how can that be implemented into what we're doing? But
Mm.
outside of the small team, it's also the strategic partnerships that we have with other brands. You know, if we are looking to get into hotel investing, if we're looking to have a conversation on nutrition. Well, let's have strategic partners that already are in that space, that have already been in it for 10 years, and let's figure out, well, how can we collaborate? Let's step back, give you a platform, lift you up, and then allow you to become kind of our hands and our mouth, and we just push it forward because you already have the expertise. You already are doing the work on the ground level.
Now, with your strategic partnerships, and kudos to you for that, I think it's one of the best ways to grow our network, grow our worth. Are they all Black businesses that you align yourself with, or has this new atmosphere brought you some funding and partnerships from the other side?
It's mostly Black,
Hmm.
but there have been strategic alliances and conversations with companies that have built platforms that are catered towards our community. And
Hmm.
I feel like we would be doing a disservice
Okay.
to not at least examine that opportunity. For example, there's a company out there that offers funding for underserved founders.
Okay.
That's their mission. It has nothing to do with black, white, green, or yellow. It's about underserved founders. And that just so happens to mean Latino founders, Asian founders, Black founders. And so we did have them on the podcast. I believe it's called Uncrowd is their name. And it's two white gentlemen who put this platform together because they saw underserved founders missing out from the Silicon Valleys and New York. So they said, "Hey, there's a big gap missing here. Let's find the funding. Let's connect investors with the founders, and let's make it happen." And we received some comments like, "Hey, why is this white man on Black equity having this conversation?" But the mission of the company makes so much sense. I don't know how I could not at least have the conversation, see where it goes. And to me, I think it's a really great opportunity for founders who are looking for funding.
My husband, he's in tech, and he's taught me a lot in regards to conversation. You can
Yes.
always have a conversation, even if you don't think that it's going to lead to profit, right? Because you never know what it leads to. So tell me maybe some of your most interesting conversations, connections, networking that didn't end in profit, but it enhanced your business or your career.
Wow. I'll be honest with you. That's the majority of conversations do not end in profit. The profit actually comes from the minority conversations, for lack of a better word, or like a small pocket. There may be, out of 100 conversations, maybe five of them lead to profits. But yeah, that's the majority of the conversations. I never really enter into a conversation looking for profits. I'm looking for alignment.
Got it.
So just for example, recently we had a conversation with a entrepreneur that was looking to launch a hair product, and they hadn't necessarily built the product yet, didn't necessarily have all the specs out yet, but they wanted to have a conversation on Black hair, have a conversation on Black women in tech. And so we had the conversation. They were still 6 months away from even launching.
Hmm.
And so that startup was not going to make us any money. We're not a VC. So there was nothing there for us to, make any profit on. But the conversation was, to me, very beautiful to talk about Black women, talk about Black hair. And that actually led to people contacting us saying, wow, I want to be on your platform. So then that led us to actually two Black entrepreneurs who built their own ticketing app
Hmm.
wanting to come onto our platform, and because they knew the person that was on the platform that we talked before, so they wanted to then have a conversation. But once that person has a conversation and then you post and you start doing the marketing, then their friends see you and say, oh, I want to be on your platform too. So it all kind of leads into each other, it all connects, and very little profit is found on the majority of conversations, because that's not really the goal. The goal is, well, how do we highlight these people that people are not paying attention to or know little bit about, and how do we prop them up so everybody is aware of these opportunities and this pathway? That, to me, that's the key.
Now we need to go back and find that woman that asked you them questions talking about what you're doing for Black women. I'm elevating their message to the masses because she clearly didn't understand how this process works. Bless her little heart. Let me know, let the audience know what you have coming up, what we can look forward to with Black Equity Network.
Sure. We are currently in our second season of Black Equity Podcast, and we recently launched our Black Equity Premium content. What we ended up doing, we had so much content that was coming out that we decided to have a premium service. So if you wanted to get access to our podcast a month before everyone else, you go on premium. If you want to have exclusive content that's not going to be on the podcast, you go to our premium service. If you want to have access to the video content, you go to our premium service. Our podcast is all audio. So we built out our premium service that launched a couple of months ago, and we've had more and more people coming in there saying, hey, I want early access. The reason why you would want early access is you want to get to the people that we're highlighting. You want to get to them first. You want to have those strategic alliances and have those people be part of your network as early as possible before the other listeners, get an opportunity to have that conversation with them.
Yep.
So that's been exciting. And then also we have a virtual conference that we have on June 30th. We partnered with Epic Collective. They actually offer advisory for hotel acquisitions. So we decided to partner with them on how to build an empire. And they've been having conversations with their network. We've been having conversations with our network. So we just brought all the different great individuals together to have a virtual conference of over 30 speakers and have kind of a blueprint for generational wealth. How do we get from point A to point Z of generational wealth, all the steps that it takes to get there? So we're having that on June 30th as a virtual conference, as a joint venture.
Who are some of those speakers? What are we talking about?
Sure. For example, on the Black equity side, we have David Mullings. He is CEO of Blue Mahoo Capital. He's actually putting together ETF on the New York Stock Exchange that is going to allow us to invest in Jamaican-owned companies that we never had access to before. Why is that important? Jamaica, for the last 3 years, has had the best performing stock market in the world. And no one's talking about it. I mean, we were talking about it, but very few people were talking about it. So we had him on the podcast. He alerted us to Jamaica having the best performing stock market in the world. And now we are shining a light on that on the How to Build an Empire conversation. So he's going to be on one of our panels where he's talking about how to diversify your portfolio and investing in the emerging markets. Many people aren't doing that. They're not necessarily going towards emerging markets or doing something away from the traditional side of things. But we want to encourage at least having that conversation so that you know that it exists.
You said many people aren't doing that. Many people don't even know about that.
Very true.
Let me back up a bit and ask, what are we doing about educating our community about other ways to build generational wealth when the things that we're speaking about right now haven't even been introduced to them in their family lineage? Like, these aren't conversations that go on at the majority of African American dinner tables. So
That's what our platform is built on. Most of our conversations are conversations that most people are either afraid to have, or are scared to have, or they just didn't know they needed to have it. And so it's sometimes it's uncomfortable to have certain conversations. I think about entrepreneur. They're not going to be at our conference, but this goes along with what you're saying. Who built his own DNA company, DNA testing company. So if you wanted to have a direct understanding of where your DNA is tied, this is called Afro Roots DNA. If you wanted to know where your DNA is, or how your DNA is connected to Africa, this is a way to do that without necessarily going to white-owned companies in order to get that accomplished. Because many of the DNA testing companies out there are white-owned. So this is a Black gentleman who has built this platform for us to access our lineage and understand our story. But it doesn't stop there. He's also going to break down what tribe you're in, why that tribe matters, the customs of that tribe, the traditions of that tribe. So it's a lot deeper than, oh, you're from Nigeria or you're from South Africa. It's deeper than that. It's, yeah, you're from Nigeria, but you're from this particular tribe, and this is what language they speak, and this is, the types of food that they eat, and these are the types of things that they do. In case you wanted to embrace that side of yourself and maybe take a trip there, you'll be well prepared when you show up.
Wow, that is dope. Afro Roots DNA.
Yes.
Oh, I got it. Interesting stuff, sir. Interesting stuff. I love
Thank
it.
you.
So
Thank you.
let the people know how to get involved, get in touch, reach out, stay connected to Black Equity Network.
Sure. If you are someone who wants to listen to our content, head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, most major places where you can listen to podcasts, and simply search Black Equity Podcast. You'll get access to over 300 episodes for the last 2 years of all the different conversations. So if you just wanted to listen and be a part of the conversation, start there. If you want to connect and be on the program, and have your company be featured, have a conversation with me, I make sure that I'm the person who's having all the interviews and having all the conversations to make sure that I'm asking the questions that I really want to know. If you want to have that conversation, you can contact me directly at djm@djmoultrie.com, and let's set that up. Let's figure out how to have that conversation. I always do a pre-interview, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, just to understand, well, where are we going with this conversation? Where is your company headed? And so we sit down, we have a conversation, and I say, you know what? I really want to highlight this particular thing. Let's dive deeper into that. And then we go on and we have the episode. So those are two different avenues to do that. And also you can go on Instagram and head over to Black Equity Network and check out our menu. You can check out other podcasts that we've been on or that we support and have connected with, and also other partners that we've connected with. We have a company by the name of Freeman Capital. If you wanted to have your financial planning and estate planning all in one place on an automated system, it's the first Black-owned automated financial planning company. Freeman Capital is right there on our menu on Instagram. You can have access to that. Of course, there is a cost, but at least you'll have access now to something that for many people is unaffordable. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars on financial planning, but this is a monthly rate that is, I think it's below $100, that you'll be able to have access to that information.
That's dope. That's definitely something our people need. Okay.
Definitely.
So I love it. I love what you're sharing, what you guys are doing. I hope everyone out there takes the time to head on over to Black Equity Network, expand your mind, be a lifetime learner. It's important. It helps you, level up, and it helps us win. It helps us win. When you do better, we all do better. So again, Mr. Moultrie, I want to thank you for taking the time to let people know about what you guys have going on. It's so valuable. And I look forward to staying connected to you and being a part of what you guys have going on. It's important, it's impactful, and I love it.
Definitely. And thank you so much for having us on the platform. You talked about being a lifetime learner. That's what this is all about. When we're having the podcast episodes, I really know nothing. I'm just sitting there listening and trying to understand, asking the questions that I would really want to know and learn about that particular area. So I agree with the being a lifetime learner part.
Thank you. So we'll make sure that we put all of Mr. Moultrie's information down below. Feel free to leave your comments, get in contact with him or us at Sand and Shores. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Content is Queen presents Leaders and Learners. Thank you.
Thank you.